Namo good morning. Thank you for joining me for our daily practice check-in. Listen, listen, listen. This beautiful sound calls us back to our true home. The fourth mindfulness training. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others. I vow to cultivate loving speech and deep listening in order to bring joy and happiness to others and to relieve others of their suffering. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I'm determined to speak truthfully with words that inspire self-confidence, joy, and hope. I will not spread news that I do not know to be certain, and will not criticize or condemn things of which I am not sure. I will refrain from uttering words that can cause division or discord, or that can cause a family or the community to break. I'm determined to make all efforts to reconcile and resolve all conflicts, however small. This morning we're reading Dependency on Thinking by Ajahn Thiradhammo from his book, Working with the Five Hindrances. Dealing with lethargy and drowsiness for those people who have cultivated the habit of depending on thinking to keep themselves awake requires a change of attitude, of how we relate to our thinking. On one of our 3-month retreats in Switzerland, a couple of people came to stay at the monastery. I gave them a few instructions on mindfulness of breathing, and after a couple of weeks I said, okay, now let go of the breathing and just observe the states of mind. One of the retreatants was confused. He told me he couldn't watch his mind. He was a reflective person and remembered that his first teaching on meditation was, meditation is not thinking. So he'd been trying for 5 years not to think. Imagine that. Now he had two thoughts, the thoughts in the mind and the thought to not think them. He was chasing his thoughts around in his head, and it usually took him about a month of intensive practice before he was able to stop thinking. But then he couldn't observe thinking or other states of mind because he had suppressed them. Then at the end of the retreat, when he went back to ordinary life, the thinking program started again, and his mind was out of control. The thoughts were thinking him again, and he usually fell into a deep depression. To be able to observe the thinking process creates a different relationship with our thoughts. Rather than wasting energy trying to stop them, when we can observe them, they sometimes stop by themselves. Maybe they've got a bit of momentum from all our old habits, but if we don't keep encouraging them or trying to suppress them, they'll eventually quiet down. We're not feeding energy to the thoughts, but putting energy into mindfully observing and knowing the thoughts. Similarly, some people have cultivated the habit of always trying to control their thoughts as their fundamental mode of functioning in life. There are all sorts of thoughts going on in the mind, and you need to have some degree of control over them, or they might drive you crazy sometimes. But it can be an exhausting struggle. This is often preceded by an insidious, judging mind, constantly commenting, "That's an inspired thought. That's a stupid thought." Meditation practice is shifting the energy to observing what's going on in the mind rather than trying to control it. However, it's not going to happen overnight. It's a matter of de-energizing our habitual way of relating to thinking and energizing the new way of observing it. This takes some clear awareness of the mental habits of judgmentalism, controlling. It took me a long time, and I'm still working on it, to be able to experience a non-judgmental awareness. I had a very strong habit of a judgmental mind, with the added complication that it was masquerading as a virtue. Of course, It's necessary to distinguish good from bad and then judge which is best for us. But most of the time, it was someone else telling me what was best for me, rather than clear awareness and experiential wisdom. However, the more we can give energy to observing this mental process, the more it fades away or takes a back seat. If you're able to observe the kind of thoughts occurring just before drowsiness sets in, you may recognize them as trying to deny or ignore something, or trying to resist, refuse, or push something away. You've created a suppressive or denying state of mind. And the usual way for the mind, the psyche, to deal with that is to fall asleep. If you notice this tendency, you need to do something about that underlying attitude. So it's helpful to be clear about your intentionality and practice. In the Eightfold Path, the factor of right aspiration is the intention for renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Is denial renunciation? Is pushing away harmlessness? If you have overemphasized or over-energized mental activity, it can be very helpful to try to shift awareness to the body. Investigate the sensations in the body, rather than looking at your thoughts whirling around. Try to broaden out awareness through the practice of mindfulness to bodily sensations, so you aren't just dependent on staying awake by thinking, but expanding your repertoire of what the mind is aware of. In this way, you can ground some of the excess mental energy in the body and come to a more even balance of energy in body and mind. You may notice that this has a beneficial effect for dealing with extremes of lethargy and drowsiness, or at least you're better able to shift energy between the physical and the mental, depending upon which is more helpful. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for joining me today.